Hi there, it's time to use the Wyckoff lens to look into Stellar again. If you're new to my session, here are the 3 key items I'll cover during the session. So let's start with the weekly chart of Stellar. Last week we already discussed about Stellar, seemingly it doesn't want to go into accumulation. And this week continues with similar situation like 2 weeks ago, back in mid-November. The price tried to head towards the orange key level of 20 cents, but find sufficient buy-in, and currently the price stays above the yellow key level of 24 cents 50. However, there's still 5 days and 5 hours left for this week's candle. So we won't know where it's heading, and the buying volume isn't as high yet as of now. When we get to the daily chart, we'll be able to see more. So my view will remain same for the time being. Higher chance to get into accumulation. There's a chance that this may be another LPSY. Okay, a last point of supply. There's a little peak over here that may form when the price further comes down. However, the positive side chance I'm still keeping over there, just in case it's bouncing up suddenly. Key levels. Okay, as of now is still uncertain, but the stage that Stellar is at seems to be quite similar to Hedera. Alright, so they are both at around mid-late stage of distribution, not willing to get to accumulation. So one more thing I want to do with you here is that we're going to bring in something interesting. The behaviors of people around the various Wyckoff stages. So instead of just talking about that particular stage, I want to let you know what actually are people doing during those stages, and that leads to those patterns on the charts. Let's start with the accumulation cycle. So after a distribution, the cycle enters the accumulation with the very first stage of preliminary support. That's where the smaller fishes are still continuing their selling, while the whales starting to get in. You see some buying already with those long wicks from the bottom. All right. And then comes the selling climax, where the price gap or the price spread and the volume both goes lower. And for selling climax, that also means the panic is over. So the fear index may lower or return to the neutral position. Then we have the automatic rally. Some people started buying, and that sets the cycle trading top. And subsequently we have more and more tests, and maybe sometime a very deep test that quickly rebound. Alright, that we call a spring, right before the price started to climb. Okay, sign of strength is part of the test. So during this period, for the multiple round of tests, there are 2 things that happen. Okay, one is the test of paper hands and diamond hands. If there are sufficient diamond hands and very few paper hands, the price won't be able to go any lower, and at that point the whales know, okay, it's time to stop and think about when to push the price up. For sign of strength, it's basically upward trading that may break above the cycle top, but then it also retraces back to further testing. Okay, that period with increased volume and increased prices, that sign of strength. Okay, so for now, if Stellar is really getting into distribution, what we're going through is that whales got in somewhere around the backup last point of support. Okay, and now we get into the distribution where the whales first sell at around the PSY period. Okay, the initial selling starts here. For Stellar, it was pretty quick, just 2 weeks. We can say 3 weeks, it's still staying at the top. It had already reached the top. And that's when the retail FOMO in. And then things quickly die down. Some people may buy the dip and have a little bit of late FOMO and caught by the fake boo. And eventually, more rounds of redistribution of Stellar happened. And for last point of supply, that's where probably the whales do their final offloading. Okay? So that's the big picture. We're still expecting to see Stellar getting into accumulation. It can start accumulate higher at around the orange key level of 20 cents or even the 0.245, the yellow key level. It doesn't necessarily has to go to the bottom of the long-term playground zone to accumulate. However, that's something we are waiting to see, whether that is exactly going on. Okay, daily. Let's say the previous period after October 10th was an entire preliminary support stage. Remember that period, people panic sell and some whales started to get in. And not until later in November, assuming that's the case, it got to the selling climax in the daily time frame. However, this is not the same as the one we talk about in the weekly time frame. So this is temporary. Assuming that there will be sideways trading and a small peak upwards, which can be another fake boo, the expectation is that more tests will come in the coming days. And the volume over the past couple of days isn't very encouraging as well. Okay, initially it's kind of stabilized above the yellow key level of 0.25. However, yesterday, with higher than average volume across the week, it dropped to the lower side, trying to test the yellow dash line at around 22 cents. That's where the previous low was about a week or so ago. So this second test expected. We expect more tests, and they can go even lower as well, because this downtrend bottom is getting lower and lower, pointing towards the red key level of around 13 cents 50. October 10th tested below this white dash line at around 17 cents 80, so it's not a surprise if the next few trading days come down to test this level. For the positive side of things, we want to see the price to continue trade sideways. Let's say it finds support along this yellow dash line and move towards the stronger side of this downtrend box or the air hockey table. Currently it's still underneath the center line, meaning it's still trading in the weaker side of it. So we want that to change. If we continue to trade sideways, that's where we hope to see that eventually it gets outside of this downward trend box. Currently, if we use the yellow dash line, okay, if we extend this line to 400, it is cutting the ceiling of the channel box at around mid-March. I know it's a very long period. However, this doesn't mean it has to wait. Remember, we're still trading around the 0.245. That means it can trade higher. If it does, then that points to somewhere near mid-end February. Okay? If things are even crazier or more optimistic, people start to get more capital to move around, mid-January is the point. So if the price continues to climb along this line, okay, even though it's being suppressed by this yellow dash line at around 30 cents, by mid-January, it's getting to a trend decision point or a trend confirmation point as to whether this is going to break outside of the downtrend or is it going to return to the downtrend. Alright, so one of the earlier days is somewhere around mid-Jan. Climbing to above the yellow dash line is a bit challenging, so the beginning of January time point has a very low chance to be achieved. But who knows, right? I don't know the tariff announcement is going to come out, and obviously I won't know what the next big news is going to come out. It's all, you know, based on people's best guess, right? And even neutral news, or even a good news, can be sold as a bad news. All right, it's, you know, a lot of psychology at play, and this sums up the stellar sessions. So let's expect to see more tests and potentially returning to accumulation. Thanks for joining me. See you in other sessions.